Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 3 of the dramatic reading of The Rainbow Boys. I know you're enjoying this so far, and this chapter is going to be extra special just for you. After school, Nelson went to Shay's for a haircut. In preparation, he spread a linen sheet on her bedroom floor while she finished up on the phone with Caitlin.
"Where's Kyle?"
Shay asked when she hung up. "How the fuck should I know?" The words came out harsher than Nelson intended. "Sorry," he mumbled. Shay placed a chair in the middle of the sheet.
Does this have anything to do with that cute No by the Moon, Tyler? The one you signaled me about?
Oh, gag me! Nelson couldn't believe that even his best dyke friend thought the basketball slut was cute. I'm sick of everyone saying how cute Jason is. Shay stopped tying the towel around Nelson's neck.
Wait a minute. That was the Jason? Kyle's every other word crush Jason. He's gay?
Nelson...
lesbian voice.
It's pretty good. Nelson shook a cigarette. What the hell? Nelson shook a cigarette out of his pack. TCJ, tragic closet jock, budding homo. He flicked his match into the incense bowl. Oh, he's okay. I just can't stand Kyle going on about him. You saw how he flew over to him? All of a sudden, I was history. Shay picked up a pair of scissors.
So, you and Kyle had a fight because Jason showed up?
The scissors snipped close to his ear.
Interesting.
Her voice took on that therapist's tone. Nelson hated it. Why did girls always act like they knew everything? Don't start that again. I'm not in love with Kyle. Wet clumps of hair fell to the floor, and he's not in love with May. The phone rang. Shay dropped the scissors and rushed to it. Of course, it was Caitlin. You just talked to her, Nelson protested. You would have thought they hadn't talked in 100 years. Caitlin was applying to colleges for next year. She and Shay had to discuss the ins and outs of every frigging detail. Local or out of state, dome or apartment, blah, blah, blah. It drove Nelson bonkers. While Shay talked, he stared at himself in the mirror. He couldn't stand how boring he looked, the same blue eyes as always. And even though Shay gave the most awesome haircuts, he'd grown tired of his blonde hair. Dull. He read the hair dye labels on Shay's dresser. Kamikaze blonde. That had crashed and burned. Auburn. Lame. Luminescent green. Glows in the dark. But would Kyle like it?
Hey, faggot! Someone spit mouthwash on your head!
The voice belonged to Jack Ransom, school asshole. Jack Ransom, school asshole. Jack had bullied Nelson since middle school, calling him names, knocking the tray out of his hands in the cafeteria, punching him as he passed in the hall. Nelson... Nobody cares. Nelson fought back, but usually got creamed. When his mom complained to the school... when... Oh, God, this chapter's crazy. When his mom complained to the school, Mr. Mueller, the principal, argued that Nelson had to learn to control his temper. Then last year, Jack and his thugs cornered Nelson in the boys' restroom, kicked him down, and shoved his face into the toilet. Nelson's mom pressed charges. Nelson hoped Jack would get fried in the electric chair, but he only got put on court probation. Every morning since then, like a broken record, Nelson's mom drummed into him.
If anyone bothers you, you just turn away. Promise?
So Nelson flipped Jack the finger and quickly turned away, walking smack into Deborah and Jason.
Oh my God!
Deborah said enthusiastically.
I love your hair!
She turned to her so-called boyfriend.
Isn't his hair outrageous?
Jason was trying his hardest to avoid Nelson's gaze. The big phony, Nelson thought. Oh, no, the big phony, Nelson thought. He felt sorry for Deborah, if she only knew, but he wasn't going to be the one to tell her. Jason tugged her hand.
We better go to class.
As he led her down the hall, Deborah's voice trailed behind her.
He's such a riot! You never know what he'll come up with next!
Nelson smiled. He loved every minute of the attention he received for his new do. Unfortunately, the person whom he... Manu do. Unfortunately, the person whom he most wanted to see it was taking geeky advanced placement tests all that rainy day. As soon as the final bell rang, Nelson headed towards Kyle's homeroom. He hoped Kyle was over being angry at him. Kyle closed his locker and grinned. That was a good sign.
I like your hair.
Nelson pouted. I thought you weren't speaking to me. Outside, the boys stood beneath the overhang of the front entrance. Rain was pouring down. You really like my hair? Nelson asked. Kyle shrugged.
Look, I need to ask.
No.
Wrong one. Okay. It looks okay.
He fidgeted with his umbrella.
Look, I need to ask you something.
Just okay? Nelson interrupted. That was the lamest compliment he'd gotten all day. Not spectacular? Not fabulous?
It's about Jason.
Jason's more important than my hair. He shook his head. I don't think so. Kyle adjusted his glasses.
Shut up and listen. Did you tell anyone about him showing up at the meeting?
Nelson heard the worry in his voice and decided to tease him. Of course. Kyle's eyes widened.
You did?
Nelson strained not to grin. Didn't you hear the loudspeaker announcement this morning?
Very funny. I'm serious.
Let's say. Nelson tapped his fingertips on his chin. I found Sheila Ledbetter yesterday morning. You know what a mouth she is. Of course I told Maria at lunchtime. He parodied a Spanish accent. Oh, God. How am I going to do this? Jason es un maricón.
Nice.
Kyle crossed his arms.
Damn it, just tell me. Did you tell anyone or didn't you?
No, I didn't tell anyone.
Are you sure?
Nelson felt really irritated. He hadn't had his after-school smoke. Hey, don't use that kind of language. It offends me. He hadn't had his after-school smoke. It was pouring rain. He didn't have an umbrella, and Kyle was being an asshole. Kyle, I should know if I told anyone.
If you did,
Kyle persisted.
you better tell me now.
Screw you. Nelson stepped into the torrent and hurried down the wet sidewalk. He bent his head and squinted his eyes as drops pelted his face. The slap of Kyle's footsteps followed behind him.
Okay, I believe you.
Kyle unfolded his umbrella as he jogged up. Nelson kept walking, not bothering to look at him.
You want to share my umbrella? You're getting wet.
Like Nelson hadn't noticed, the sensible thing would be to accept Kyle's offer, but even though he was drenched and cold, he ignored him. By the time they reached the stoplight at Washington Boulevard, his shoes felt heavy as water buckets.
Sure you don't want to share my umbrella?
Kyle asked. Rain dripped from Nelson's hair into his eyes. His soaked shirt clung to his skin, and he was shivering. Fine, he relented. Kyle huddled next to him. Fine. Fine. You're looking fine, Kyle. Oh, God. This is my brain. Kyle huddled next to him, shielding him with the umbrella. Turn off your crap ringtone, Chelsea. Kyle huddled next to him, shielding him with the umbrella. They walked silently until they reached Lee Highway. Nelson stared at the light.